My name is Nancy, and at 29, I'm driven by ambition and focused on building my career. Right now, I live with my husband, Benjamin. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about starting a family, but Benjamin is adamant that we should prioritize getting into a new home before considering children. So, we're both working hard to save up for our future. I would love to start our family sooner, but whenever we discuss it, Benjamin firmly insists that we need to establish our home first. His stance is clear, but it's also disheartening. It often feels like he's disregarding my feelings, and I can't help but feel pressured to push myself harder to contribute more to our savings. We've been married for a year now, and I'm starting to notice a troubling pattern. Benjamin rarely takes my perspective into account, a habit that has lingered since our dating days. I once admired his decisiveness, but I've come to realize that respect for each other's views is essential in a marriage. Lately, I'm concerned about the stability of our relationship, especially with the influence of his parents, who live close by. Benjamin frequently visits them under the pretense of saving money, yet I've noticed that he often spends time socializing with his colleagues, going out for drinks without factoring these expenses into the budget. It's frustrating how he holds me to strict saving standards but allows himself certain indulgences. His frugality even extends to minor things, like turning off lights too early or limiting the hot water. These rules seem to apply only to me, and it's beginning to feel like our relationship is becoming unbalanced. As much as I'm frustrated, he continues to enforce his viewpoint as if it's the only reasonable one. When we visit his parents, the pressure mounts. It's been a year since your wedding. We're hoping for some good news soon, they always say, eagerly waiting to hear about their grandchild. During these moments, I often catch Benjamin giving a disapproving glance, silently signaling them to stop. It's a constant reminder of how I feel caught between my desire to start a family and his insistence on waiting until we have our own home. We both want a child, but he insists that the house comes first. I also feel frustrated by my in-laws' constant pressure about having a baby, as if it's my fault we haven't started yet. They don't seem to direct their concerns at Benjamin, even though he's just as unwilling to move forward. After dinner, when Benjamin steps outside for a smoke, he casually says, "Nancy, you're working hard, but if you really want to be a housewife, maybe you should quit your job and focus on the home. That could be why you're not getting the attention you need from me." His words sting, implying that my career is the reason we can't have a family. It's not true. Benjamin isn't ready for children, no matter what he might say. I snap at my in-laws, my patience finally running thin. Benjamin's the one who encouraged me to keep working. I say sharply, "Why don't you talk to him before you lecture me again?" I continue, frustration rising in my chest. I want children, too, but Benjamin's the one who's not ready. Please stop directing your concerns at me. The room falls silent. I can see the shock on their faces as I excuse myself from the table and head toward the door. Benjamin, casually smoking by the entrance, says nothing. As I get into the car, a friend who had joined us for dinner asks, "Are you leaving already?" She has no idea about the tension that's been building all evening. Exhausted by the relentless pressure from both Benjamin and my in-laws, I declare, I'm done with visiting them for now. I can't take it anymore. Benjamin looked at me, clearly surprised. "Why not? We can save on food costs, right? And besides, you want a home and kids soon, don't you?" His words hit me like a slap. Fed up, I snapped back, "If it's really about saving, then maybe you should cut back on your drinking and smoking. Instead of driving to your parents' place just to avoid the cost of a meal, why don't you save in those ways, too? Everyone needs a break." My voice was sharp, my frustration spilling out. Benjamin had always imposed tight restrictions on me, like cutting back on hot water usage and insisting lights be off by 9 p.m., under the guise of saving money. He seemed to think these changes required no real sacrifice, but if I'm the only one making these adjustments, then I don't even want this house. I thought bitterly, I'm tired of this. You never give up anything yourself, but you're perfectly fine demanding sacrifices from me. He brushed my concerns aside, claiming they weren't a big deal, but I wasn't having it. "No, it is a big deal. Do you have any idea how much patience I've had to hold on to all this time?" I was furious, his ongoing pretense in front of his parents, making it seem like I was the reason we couldn't have children, only made things worse. I'm tired of being pressured about grandchildren. It's not me who's hesitant about having children, it's Benjamin. I've been clear about wanting them soon, so please stop this constant pressure, I continued, my voice trembling with frustration. Seeing Benjamin struggle for a response to my uncharacteristic outburst gave me a small sense of satisfaction, but it didn't change anything. The real problem was still there, lurking beneath the surface. Uncertain of what to do next, I stared out the car window, blocking him out entirely. A month later, a significant event shifted everything. My father's brother passed away. He had lived a lavish life, leaving behind several pieces of land and a luxurious mansion. Benjamin's eyes widened when he heard about the inheritance. "I didn't know you had such a remarkable relative," he said, clearly impressed. A few days later, I decided to meet with a lawyer in our apartment to go over the details of the estate, since the inheritance was exclusively mine, and I could sense Benjamin's discomfort with the whole situation. I politely asked him to step out of the room. I didn't want any potential tension to complicate the meeting. 5 hours later, after the lawyer had explained everything, I thanked him and saw him out. When I turned around, I was surprised to find that Benjamin was no longer in the apartment. I assumed he had stepped out to give us some privacy. Unaware of what was coming, I began preparing dinner. 4 months later, Benjamin invited me on a drive. I couldn't help but feel a mix of curiosity and excitement, but as we drove into a quiet residential area and stopped in front of a house I didn't recognize, confusion took over. Benjamin pressed the intercom, and to my shock, my in-laws stepped out, not from their usual home, but from this new one. My father-in-law's face lit up as he approached us. "You finally made it, so when are you and Nancy moving in?" he asked with a grin. Benjamin answered casually, "We're thinking of moving in by the end of the month." But then my father-in-law's tone changed. He looked at me with a disapproving expression and accused me of being a selfish daughter-in-law, shifting all the responsibility of having children onto Benjamin. I shot Benjamin a sharp, disapproving look, confused by his choice to bring me here. I'd made it crystal clear that I no longer wanted to visit my in-laws. Yet here we were, needing some answers. I asked, "Why are we here, Benjamin?" His response was almost unnervingly calm. "Don't be upset. Living together can help improve your relationship with my mom. Plus, this will be our new home, so you should be more cooperative when it comes to the kids." His words hit me like a blow. He had known exactly how I felt about living with his parents. Yet here he was, making decisions for us without so much as a discussion. Benjamin went on, explaining that the house was a two-family residence. "It was always part of the plan for us to live with my parents." "What's the issue with that now?" he asked, as if the arrangement should have been obvious to me. I tried to process it, but the weight of the situation was suffocating. The house was clearly beyond our means, and I couldn't understand how Benjamin thought we could afford such a grand place. My dad and I chipped in, so our savings are basically gone now. "But that's fine, right?" Benjamin said, his tone completely nonchalant. His disregard for our mutual financial plans felt like a slap in the face. Then, as if he hadn't already stunned me enough, he added, "I heard your uncle's inheritance was about $720,000, so, if you use that money to pay us back for the house, it should all work out, right?" His assumption that I would just hand over my inheritance to cover this mess without even consulting me left me speechless. The sheer audacity of it, to think I would finance his decisions without question, was unnerving. My frustration boiled over, and Benjamin seemed oblivious to the tension in the air. He reached into his bag and pulled out a divorce form, his name already scrawled across it. "Your money is our money. If you don't want to live together, let's just get a divorce," he said confidently. The nerve. I took the form from his hand, my voice steady but full of resolve. "Fine, if those are the only options, then divorce is the better choice for me." I tucked the form into my bag, turned my back on him, and walked out, leaving my stunned in-laws behind. As I stepped toward the door, I casually added, "By the way, I've renounced my uncle's inheritance." Benjamin stood frozen, his face a mix of confusion and disbelief, but I didn't wait for him to react. I headed straight to the bus, made my way home, and immediately filled in my name on the divorce form, right where Benjamin's had already been. I finalized the papers and submitted them without hesitation. Then, I went to a home improvement store, bought a few boxes, and started packing. Realizing I couldn't handle the move alone, I hired a moving company. Thankfully, it was a slow season, and the relocation went quickly. As I packed, I heard Benjamin's car pull up outside. I quickly locked the chain on the door and called out, "Sorry, I have the chain on. I'm not sure what you do in your state right now. I still have packing to finish. Could you stay at your parents' place for a few days?" Benjamin's voice was defiant. "I won't accept a divorce," he declared. I was taken aback but reminded him, "But you handed me the divorce papers, didn't you? If you signed them, that means you're agreeing to the divorce, you know." He looked at me, his face a mix of frustration and confusion, before quickly changing the subject. "Why would you give up a $720,000 inheritance? You'd normally inherit that," he asked, clearly misinterpreting the situation. He must have overheard something about the inheritance and rushed to tell my in-laws. In their haste, they had bought the two-family house without fully considering the consequences. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. The inheritance was mine to handle, and renouncing it was my decision. I did it to avoid exactly this kind of complication. My uncle's estate was far from simple. Even though the inheritance was worth $720,000, the costs were astronomical. The mansion needed to be demolished, the land required expensive upkeep, and my uncle had significant debts. Everyone else in the family renounced their claims, his 2 sons, 2 daughters, his wife, even his grandchildren. It was just me left to decide what to do with it. When I explained everything to Benjamin, his reaction was one of utter disbelief. "No way, you're telling me that even with $720,000, there wouldn't have been anything left? That sounds like fraud," he exclaimed, his voice rising with shock. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. After speaking with the lawyer, it became clear that the inheritance wasn't the windfall he thought it was. It was actually more of a burden than anything else. But someone overheard part of the conversation and misunderstood the full picture. His expression went blank as the truth began to sink in. For a moment, I thought he might finally grasp the situation, but I remained firm. "It's too late for that now. You've betrayed my trust, Benjamin. The divorce papers have been filed, and we are no longer a couple, so why are you now acting like you don't want this to happen? If you truly didn't want to separate, you should have come after me when I left." I pointed out the consequences of his and his father's rushed decisions, how they had invested in the two-family house without understanding all the facts, without even consulting me. "Your mother's opinion on the divorce doesn't change anything. She may not fully grasp the value of money, but that doesn't alter the reality of our situation." A heavy silence settled between us, and I realized that discussing his parents' behavior wasn't my problem anymore. If we were still married, I might have been open to hearing him out, but now, it felt pointless. I turned back to the task at hand. "You haven't submitted the divorce papers yet, have you?" I asked, my voice steady. His tone shifted to desperation. "If you do this now, we can still be together. Let's live in that house, it'll fix everything." I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. "It's too late. I've already submitted the papers. There's no going back now." Benjamin's face crumpled in disbelief, a mix of confusion and regret written all over him. He stood motionless by the door, his eyes searching mine for something, an answer, perhaps, that I no longer had to give. I could feel the weight of the moment, but I also knew there was nothing left to say. The damage was done. For a brief moment, I considered asking him to leave, but I didn't want to waste any more time. I turned back to my packing, preparing for the next phase of my life. Benjamin, still standing there, eventually left, and I continued with my plans. I called my workplace to let them know about the divorce, especially since my boss had been acting as a mediator during our troubled times. I also shared the news with my colleagues over lunch, many of whom had celebrated our wedding with us. The next day, Benjamin barged into my department while I was talking to my coworkers, visibly upset. "It's ridiculous that you're talking about the divorce," he blurted. "I wish you hadn't told anyone." He went on to explain to everyone that he had assumed I had inherited a large estate, which was why he had impulsively suggested buying the two-family house. But faced with the choice between divorce and living together, I said, cutting him off, "I chose divorce." Benjamin's outburst only made things worse. At work, he quickly became isolated, and my colleagues, sympathetic toward me, began to distance themselves from him. The tension at his own job escalated until he eventually resigned, unable to handle the fallout. During this difficult period, one of my male colleagues approached me. He had always been kind, but now he spoke with a sincerity that caught me off guard. "I've liked you for a long time," he admitted, his voice soft but steady. "I want to build a life where we can communicate and truly work through things together." His words, unexpected and genuine, offered a flicker of hope amidst the turmoil. It was a reminder that even after everything had fallen apart, the possibility of something different, a healthier, more understanding partnership, was still out there.